world around us is changing, and in the humanitarian community, it would be very important to ask the question, what will the world look like in the next 20 years? According to the US report, Alternative Worlds 2030, we expect to see three major shifts. First, rapid, unsustainable urbanization in the global south. So this is increasing slums, informal cities between 200,000 and 500,000, and also megacities of around 14 million or so. So that's one of the major shifts that we're actually seeing. Second shift is in climate change and scarcity of resources. So it's the food, water, energy nexus crisis. And the third is the diffusion of global power. So what this means is that more crises will happen more frequently, often simultaneously, and on a larger scale. So these are called mega catastrophes. And when all this sort of recipe gets put together, we see that the already stretched thin international community will struggle to cope with these challenges, urban challenges. So urban settings are characterized by complex, fluid, unequal, diverse, and interconnected communities. It means that crises are particularly challenging for humanitarian actors. First, structural inequities like poverty combined with demographic shifts and infrastructure failures during the crisis to yield intensified inequality, resource scarcity, competition, and social conflict. Targeting of beneficiaries is also particularly problematic as IDPs and refugees are diffused within urban environments. So current humanitarian tools used for identifying these urban host communities and IDPs may lead to misdistribution of aid or reinforcement of inequities. So this calls for more understanding of urban vulnerability, infrastructure networks, and adopting a systems perspective. So sectors like WASH, shelter, education, and health are limited because they're too narrow in scope and they're actually embedded in urban infrastructures that involve a diversity of actors, institutions, and markets that support them. Additionally, those sectors are even characterized by market situation. There are challenges to urban settings, but also there are some information communication technology shifts that we're seeing as well. So the first shift is in mobile phones, so that's kind of low-end technology. If you look at the graph on the left, you'll see that in the top 20 recipients of humanitarian aid from 2000 to 2001 are growing at a rate of 400%. Okay, so that's huge. The second shift is in sort of mid-range technologies. These are in access to the internet, social media, and things like this. And the third shift is in high-end technologies, access to satellite imagery, becoming more affordable for analysts. So if you look here, this is Jakarta, and that's exhibiting 9 million tweets per day. That's from UN Global Pulse. And so it means that we can harness information about communities in complex urban environments more and more easily. The photo on the right is actually, it's a map of London, and what you can see here is different populations. So the population in blue are the local populations taking pictures and posting them onto Twitter. The data in the red are tourists. And we can tell these things because the folks that are posting things in blue have been doing that for 30 days or more, whereas the people that were posting in the red were doing it less often. So that we can deduce from that that this is the differentiation between different segments of society. So that brings up interesting questions about targeting displaced communities and targeting refugee communities and trying to identify them even within the complex fabric of the urban space. And they were doing this in real time, so it was great. They were able to process tweets using algorithms to turn 2 million tweets down to 2,000 stories and then try to identify people. And they were also mapping things in real time. So on the bottom you see here a mobile device used to rate the damage of a particular location. And volunteers can do that from anywhere. They can do it from a dorm room in Boston, for example. So there's an information explosion which I think we can actually harness to understand the complexities of urban environments that have access to these technologies, but it's a question of how we do it. And I think collaboration with the private sector is a good way to start, it's a good way to approach this. So I'd like to sort of end off by talking about particular partnership models and thinking about two things. The first sort of thing to think about is in urban settings, are sector-based approaches okay? Is a narrow-based focus on education or livelihoods or health enough? And the second question is, where do you imagine, or what do you imagine the partnerships looking like? One category is mobilization of resources. Another type of partnership is implementation. So you harness the power of the private sector to implement services and to gain access to those services in a more efficient way. Another model of partnership includes innovation. You build long-term partnerships with the private sector and the humanitarian sector to design new solutions to unknown problems. Okay, so we're seeing a lot of this coming out of UNICEF Innovation Labs, UNHCR Innovation Labs, for example. And a final sort of partnership could be with coordination and advocacy.